holding off on the election of officers until after elections. Anybody want to say anything about that? Tanner!
Okay, just a FYI for anybody who is on council's agenda for Thursday, 2 of the board members. One of the council members at least will not be present, so who knows, that vote could again result in a tie, but it's on their agenda for Thursday. Hopefully this issue will be behind us shortly. That was it. Just sharing.
They got that. Is that can?
Well, and just so you also clarify for the record, and I'm sure it's going to get clarified on Thursday, but you have put out, we had those candidates who came before council previously. You've put out a bid or whatever for anyone else to join. Is that correct? In the meantime,
the city advertises the vacancies and solicits applications. They receive those applications. We do not. And then they, review
so
them.
you don't receive them. Suzanne receives them.
Correct.
Okay.
Last I heard from her,
She
no
didn't
new
have it.
applications have been submitted, and the only 3 applicants are the 3 who originally applied, being
All right.
Murphy, Jerry, and Murray. So that's, I think,
Okay.
current state of things.
Okay, additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda. Does anybody have anything? Then I guess we'll move on. All right, approval of minutes for November 10th, 2020. Here we are a couple months later. A few months later.
That was pretty much how I remember it.
Yeah. I'll move to approve the minutes as written.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Mr. Coy, our favorite part, the money piece.
Okay, did you all receive the budget documents in the packet? So, I have very little to report, but did want to update everyone as to the status of our 2021 budget. If you think back some months ago, this board approved a 2021 budget, which is on the finance document I sent out. On the far right, you'll see 2 columns that have gold at the top and are labeled 2021 budget. The column on the left is the one that we approved. The column on the right is the one the council approved. So you'll recall I came back to the board, I think it was in the minutes we just approved for December, letting you know that the council had some concerns and wanted to make some changes. We discussed it, and I was directed to meet with the council in their work session or meeting, I don't recall, and explain how we arrived at the budget we had proposed and advocate for that. I did. We did not get exactly that, but what was approved is pretty close. So beginning at the top, you'll see, starting with revenue, we had approved a budget with $696,000 in revenue, $8,000 in abatements, and $1,000 in interest on deposits. At that time, we did not have the final certification of values from the county. That came shortly thereafter, so I did update the budget to reflect the new revenue projection based on that final certification. The new revenues are projected to be $735,294. I did not change any of the other revenue items. Moving down into expenditures, The council did not approve $14,000 for beautification. They did, however, approve $2,000. The next expenditure on the list is TIF reimbursement agreements. I had $100,000 in previously, just estimating from the year before. If you look one column to the left, you'll see 98. And then I combed through all of the agreements, the TIF reimbursement agreements that are in effect. I looked up the current assessed values of all the properties that are subject to those agreements, and calculated all of the reimbursements for 2021. And this was prior to the certification of mills, so there's still something of a gray area in the calculation. But the new number came to $130,627. So I updated that when bringing the budget forward to the council, and that was approved. Everything else in our budget remained the same, except county treasurer fees did increase slightly because they are derived, purely as a function of the revenue amount. And that is it. So the net effect is you'll see some increase in revenue from what we had originally approved in our budget, some increase in expenditure, and also an increase in the projected unrestricted cash reserve at the end of the year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfectly. I'm impressed that you find the time to do this.
One thing that's helped a lot is having our own ledger. I have a QuickBooks file just for DDA accounting. So whenever I process anything, revenues, statement from the county, or expenditures that go out, I enter it into QuickBooks as if it were, I built it as if it were a private entity, not specifically as a public entity, which I haven't researched how to do that in QuickBooks, but it functions well. There's balance sheet and, profit and loss statement and, all sorts of reporting. So it's very easy to run numbers and, keep the reports up to date now.
Cool.
Much easier than ever before.
Well, thank you for doing You're doing a great job.
Thanks.
Any comments on the budget report or the finance report?
Board moves to approve and accept.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Budget is passed as presented. Okay, development proposals for Woodland Station. Tanner, Mike gave you a short visit during holidays.
Mike Williams was out during the holidays. He closed on a residential property in Divide, is now a property owner here in Teller County, and I guess part-time resident. He stopped in to my business to visit briefly. I also had the pleasure of meeting his wife. Wonderful, very pleasant lady. Anyway, he seemed very enthusiastic still about the project. Was very upbeat, very positive, and looking forward to some more progress at some point, but was rather non-committal about what that would be and when. We didn't really get into any details. He did express that his partnerships and with other interested parties on his side of this deal seem to be ebbing and flowing. Some new parties expressing interest. Some of the previous parties he'd been dealing with seem to be losing some interest. Things are still in flux. There was no real interest in executing the exclusive negotiating agreement that we provided. We didn't talk much about that, but my assumption here is that without competing proposals for the property, he may not feel pressure to execute an exclusive negotiating agreement. which would start a clock ticking and require a check being issued, or a payment on his part. So until there's some additional pressure to make that happen, I'm not sure that we're going to see it. We're just waiting for them, essentially. At the same time, I have had a couple of follow-up emails from SEH Design Build, which is the design build firm that we had a Zoom meeting with. I say we, Murph and I and Sally Riley and was that it? I'm trying to remember who all was on that meeting. It was a while
I'm
back.
asking a 60-year-old guy. Dude. I think that was it. I don't remember.
There were a number of people from SEH on the meeting.
Yeah.
I think 4 or 5 people from that company. They're very interested in the property and facilitating development. They're a firm that can be hired for really any or all parts of real estate development. If you have interested investors who may need some development professionals to facilitate, such as planning, site planning, subdivisions, engineering, construction, all of that, they can do whatever is asked of them, including marketing of property, soliciting other investors or other business interests, potential tenants, etc. They have followed up with us several times, expressing interest in meeting with the current interested potential investors. My last email to them was a couple days ago, just letting them know we've had no further interest expressed. We're really just waiting for those interested investors to reach out, communicate, make any more progress, or let us know what their wishes are and how we might facilitate. So until we hear from them, I told them I really don't have any direction for how to engage SEH. So that's something that probably would come up here next. I guess the only other thing I have to say about Mike Williams and company is that although it may seem obvious at this point that there's been little or no progress for quite some time, and that's disappointing and seems to be a recurring trend with efforts to develop Woodland Station. We have been under some very strange, unprecedented circumstances that have affected all of us in ways that I don't know that any of us have really experienced before, particularly those in the food service industry, such as Mike Williams and some of his partners. So I don't know how that has affected them and their willingness or abilities to proceed, their confidence, etc. I do maintain some open-mindedness in dealing with them because of all that we've been through with this. The road pretty much stopped turning for a while. Anyway, here we find ourselves. So how to move forward is the question. And if all, I guess that concludes my report.
Well,
Mr.
we
Chair.
also need to keep in mind, okay, as you said, we've got some very strange and unprecedented times going on. So everybody took a long vacation and started doing home improvements, and there was nobody left at the sawmills or the lumber yards or other places where this stuff is processed. If nobody's noticed, the price of materials has skyrocketed. Okay. If I were a businessman like Mike Williams, I might actually be in a wait and see and set back for a hot minute, because a friend of mine took out a $100,000 note to build an addition on his house, 1 bedroom, and it turned into a $150,000 note before it was said and done. And so we probably need to remember there's in life, in business life, we say there's good, there's fast, there's inexpensive. Now pick two because you ain't getting number three. So if this turns into a long process with an inexpensive outcome for Mike Williams, I'd be perfectly okay with that if there was a positive outcome. Unless somebody has a lot of money they can throw at Mike right now to make this happen. You know, I mean, that's, wait a minute, you own a bank, don't you?
You know, that's a good point you made, Murph. It makes sense. The price of lumber, I think, Shannon, hasn't it gone up like 50%?
It has, and it's the other part of it is all of the fires in California, the northwestern part of the states. That's where a lot of the lumber comes from. So that's part of the reasoning behind the increase in lumber as well, was all the fires over the summer.
Yeah, there have been some accelerated circumstances. However, I do feel I'm going to have to say I feel more comfortable with Mike. I would like it if they would, you know, consider taking on the advisors with SEH, because is that am I correct? SEH. Okay. And it was you and I and Sally. I remember.
SDH or SEH?
Sierra Echo Hotel.
Even though building material of all sorts, it's not just lumber, but it's steel, it's concrete, it's labor, is increasing rapidly in cost. But there are still people out there that are building houses. There's a lot of pre-solds that are showing up. So there's people that are willing to buy. Now, I've been in Woodland Park long enough to hear this same scenario at different times. It's always, well, the cost of materials is going up, therefore the house is now more costly to buy. Then you look at it from a more distant future, then you look back and say, well, that wasn't so bad, and we continue to grow. So this shouldn't be a game stopper, it's just that you've got to be smarter on how it works.
Yes, but if we're comparing the housing market to business properties, which is a totally different thing, we have lost how many businesses now? We've lost Southern Lily. We have lost a huge amount, and that was the predominant side that Mike was looking at was the food service with some properties for, you know, living in as well. However, at the same point, I would be reticent to sit there and jump into that boiling pot at this moment myself.
The hospitality industry has been severely impacted, absolutely. But the population of Teller County continues to grow. So the market continues to grow. And that's been going on for decades.
The housing market continues to grow.
Population
Yeah, I
continues
got
to
that.
I
got that.
The number of houses.
Business is way down.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did. Let's see. Over there, of course, it was the shutdown, but we lost $250,000 sales in just one quarter.
Yeah.
Okay. And now I have 50% capacity. I don't turn hardly anybody away, even during our busy times out. I don't. I mean, I'm at like 50% or less of revenues, and now I'm sitting here also. Of course, minimum wage went up again. Yay. And one of my number one expenses, peanut oil, which I fry in, went up 30% last week, and I go through about it would be about $800 a month now, up from about I spent about $250, about $500 is what I was spending. So everything's continuing to increase in that, and the crunch is coming on hospitality more and more.
And that's a big one, yeah. I'm in the manufacturing industry down in the spring, and we've not seen any slowdown at any time. We're continuing to grow. But then our products, though, are international also, as well as around the U.S. So depending upon, the industry, some are hurt really bad. And some, it doesn't seem to be hurt too bad at all.
Yeah, it just depends on which one it is.
Telecommunications stuff is going gangbusters. It's concealed fab down in the Springs. They are short on employees in order to fill all of their orders. So it depends upon the industry group that, yes, hospitality has been horrible, airlines horrible. I'm sure glad I don't own a cruise line right now, or an airplane.
Yeah. You can get a
Not
six,
good.
You can get a 6-bedroom
Yeah.
vacation rental down in Florida right now for about $100 a night.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Wow. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I was going to say, Tanner, is there anything in the budget for a retreat to Florida?
They did give us, we
used to
did
do that.
500 for travel and training.
Yeah, right.
It's 5 nights now.
Didn't they
This
used to
actually
do that?
may cause a reflection on somebody who wants to put something on that and develop the project. Maybe being in a single industry is not where you want to be. Maybe you want to look at what other alternatives are available
Yeah.
that might work.
Very much so.
Yeah. So it's just a kind of a lesson to say, how do we scope our business going forward?
Can I jump into the water there? Can I jump into the water there? From, are you okay with me sharing our conversation, the vision of what I kind of...
It doesn't bother me. If you're going to jump in the water, it needs to be a cannonball. Okay.
Cannonball?
Cannonball.
All right. From where I sit in council and I look at what the players are here, I see that there is a large voice, or no, there's a loud voice, not a large voice, a loud voice that says, DDA, go away, you're taking money from the city, blah, 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 right? There's a loud voice of that. Then there's a clock. There's a clock that says, by the end of 2023, if I'm correct, something needs to be done with that property, or the city has the right to exercise taking it back. Am I correct in that? Okay. And so, and then you have, like, how do we create, as a responsible development authority, how do we create the best use of that land, right? My observation has been that the DDA agreement with the city has been flawed in the best use of that property and some of the restraints that have been put on it, on the DDA, to allow the best use of it. So my thought is the Mike Williams are coming and going, that type of thing, and for whatever reasons, and they're all very valid, right? But the truth is, what's best for Woodland Park with the use of that land? And do we really know it? And has the right investor come along who's got deep enough pockets to make the best use of it? I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no, I'm just asking that question. So the value of the property to the DDA is, from what I understand, $2 million. That's what it cost, and that's what they're carrying. Never mind the costs of what it's cost to try to stimulate some of this business growth in the last number of years that it's cost the DDA out of pocket. Part of that, I think, is because of the flawed structure of the agreement with the city, that is forcing the DDA to do stuff to make something happen. Well, in the marketplace, that rarely works. That's just the same sort of stuff we've got happening from Denver telling us what to do. I mean, that's that dominating free enterprise, the possibility of that property really coming alive is going to happen in its own season, in my observation. So, to deal with the folks that are saying, oh, DDA, go away, whatever else, what if we look at the possibility of a three I see it like a triangle, right? At the top of it, you've got, okay, fine, let's get a realtor and let's put a sign on that property for $2 million, right? Then you have over here the developers. You've got the Mike Williams, etc. down here, and you're going, oh, now there's a clock ticking because somebody else could take that property. Maybe it's a good time for us to really talk to our partners and see, hey, can we really make something happen here? do we really want to engage in this and make it happen? And that's going to put them what do you call it? The put up or shut up for any investor. They're going to go, I can't play in that field. It's too deep or whatever, right? But it puts the DDA in a position where you're going, hey, there's pressure for us to do something on that property before 2023, right? All right, let's put a sign in the yard and see what sort of traction it gets, right? We're not going to give it a fire sale. We're not going to give it away. It costs us that. It may be more than the value in the market right now, right? But hey, we're going to put that marker in the sand. Then you've got the Mike Williams. They can come along and they can do what they like. But there's another part of that piece of property that I see that is absolutely crying out. And that is, back in 2016, when I first started looking at this stuff, Tanner showed me the file of your 2016 PDF blueprint of what that could look like for an open space. What that could look like for having car shows, music events, farmers market, all of the sort of activities that do what? They bring dollars to Woodland Park. And so if we can say, okay, we put a sign in the yard, but we spend our time, energy, and effort of something we can actually actionably do as a board, and say, all right, let's look at putting some of our resources into making that this spring be a car stopper, where people go, oh my God, what's that over there? Oh wow, there's some event happening over there. Come on, honey, let's pull over. Let's have a look, right? How much is it going to cost us to put some gravel, put some boulders, some of the things that are already around, we already have, make the place attractive, spend our resources now to say, hey, this piece of property is something that even our local business owners or outside business owners will look at and say, we want to rent that space, we want to hold an event. So that's the three-pronged concept that I see for this property. Now, in the meantime, so it's a few $1,000s, maybe even it's $100,000. I don't know what that number looks like, right? But you then spend this time between now, 2021 and 2023, giving people a reason to come to Woodland Park, to stop in Woodland Park, and to enjoy Woodland Park. One person who stops might be a multi-millionaire and goes, wow, look at this space. Gee whiz, hey, boy, if I could capture this, I have a great vision for it. Anyway, that's what I see with this. What do you think?
Well, we've often envisioned it being a event type venue, which would bring business to the existing business, not necessarily compete with the existing business. It's always been an attractive thing, but honestly, in the way I see it, what's been stopping us is city council, and we've been attacked, maligned, and all because I don't know. I think that there's a faction of people that's their agenda, is to shut us down, make us look bad. I mean, it wasn't too long ago we were called corrupt business owners on the DDA. Now that's the kind of attitude we've been dealing with, and not one person from the council objected to that. It's come to our defense. A couple of years ago, we were called child molesters on social media. All of this is an attack on us. So anything that we've tried to do with that property has meant resistance because of certain people. And so once we clear there and we actually try to do what's best for the community, I mean, where we, as a community, we all work together, I think there's a lot of potential to make it right. But yes, we've wanted to make that an event stopper, You know, something that is going to attract people here. I wholeheartedly agree with you. And a big sign out front, sure, why not? I mean, that's what we're trying to do. But we're not really in charge of the economy, and we're not developers and all that. You just are enablers.
You know, you're stewards. You're stewards of
Yeah.
the development properties in Woodland Park.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, I'm on city council, so number one, you got one person in your family.
Yeah.
And you know, Stephanie just did too. So.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is driving the bus with a positive energy and a sense of focus is going to take some of these naysayers. I mean, you can't stop the naysayers. I'm surprised at how many toxic naysayers we have in Woodland Park. It's unnecessary. It's totally unnecessary. And it hinders our ability for people to go, wow, let's come up to Woodland Park. There's something cool happening here. Because under the surface is a bunch of negative attitudes. So if we can pop that bubble with something that's fair for everybody. So you have the people who say, get rid of it all, get rid of the DDA, whatever. You have a sign up, right? You've taken an action step in that regard. But we don't waste our time between now and the spring to make the place something that's going to help our economy as we move forward. Because heaven knows that everything has been just like seriously impacted this last year. And for us to come out with a viable action step for our community and for passersby, I think that's a good use of our time, energy, and attention right now. No matter what the naysayers are saying, it's like I don't do social media because I know there's so much nonsense out there. I don't care. I don't care what they're saying. So
Yeah.
just turn it off.
Well, yeah.
Unsubscribe.
The corrupt business part was spoken in a council meeting.
The what?
Corrupt business running the DDA was spoken in a council meeting. And the other is social media. But they figured out now that they can just try to discredit us, and attack us. And so I appreciate your attitude and I appreciate your help in writing this, because I guarantee you none of us are corrupt, none of us are child molesters,
Well, Jerry, don't you think some of that stuff comes from the fact that there's been a underlying belief, thought, strategy that anybody who had a plan could get that property for nothing? Don't you think that could cause a certain sense of conniving and a sense of bad-mouthing and whatever? Because if I can get that property for nothing, boy, all my dreams are going to come true. I think that there's that little seed that's been involved in that property has been very poorly designed in the negotiations, however the city and DDA did what they did. And maybe we need to go back, and I don't know if we have a fairly balanced council now to look at that, but I think that might be part of the solution, because, to me, I walked into a hornet's nest as a potential member of council coming to this whole DDA thing. The amount of negativity, bad faith between people was just like horrible. But when I look at what you guys have done, you look at the track record of the DDA for Woodland Park, it's fabulous. It really is fabulous, And I think that needs to get showcased way more than it is. I don't think that we're really seeing the good things that the DDA has done for Woodland Park. And, maybe if you have influence, or maybe if you have influence with the social media, there's a way of really changing the dialogue. Why are we always trying to gotcha stuff? It's not about gotcha. It's about what's going to really make our community come alive when we're all excited. It's like, okay, you may have a different point of view than I do, but it's like, it doesn't make you a child molester, Anyway, I'll shut up. That was my cannonball. So
You hit it on the head about the free property part over there. But when you look at how that originated, who set that up over at Woodland Station and all, then it all makes sense. And I'm not gonna name names right now, but our detractors are the ones that set that up. And now we're the victims. But it would not be in the public's best interest to give that property away.
I don't think so.
Yeah, not at all. Or to put the infrastructure in for them and give them free property. Who wins in that? Not the public. And it's, so anyway, I'll be quiet.
I've been on the council here for sufficiently long that I have seen the Mike Williams concept come and go. There's something that is not allowing it to move forward. We get a lot of promises, but they don't move forward. So what we've been doing in the past probably needs to be revisited to see how we can change that and make it more desirable. I can understand having an area like that, for various events. The negative that I see on that, first let's go to the positive side, is yes, it brings people to Woodland Park for whatever that event is, be it the car show, be it the farmer's market. But that's in a very short period of time during the summer. That's really very, very viable. In my mind, I've been wanting to look at it in terms of what can go into there that's going to have a year-round impact and not just a spike during the summertime. And I guess that's why I'm looking, to come up with a development process that has retail, has perhaps accommodations of one nature or another, something that is property tax generating, sales tax generating, and interest generating. And somebody, an entrepreneur, who looks at that property and says, yes, I'd like to be in Woodland Park. I'd like to build XYZ business and establish it here. But when they look at $2 million for a piece of property that requires a huge amount of work in order to get his 5,000-6,000 square feet or 15,000 square feet, that's a problem that they don't want to tackle. I think this is the focus that DDA should be, is to design that property for the small entrepreneur, not for some bigger one, of which that's not big enough to do much if you're going to be a big entrepreneur. So we have to change our scope and not look for somebody to develop the entire piece. We need to look at those that are going to need, 30,000 square feet of dirt or 40,000 square feet of dirt. Not, 13 acres or 9 acres?
6.
I see 3 parcels down there that, have different applications. And that's what we have to start to focus on ultimately.
Well, unless
And
we
develop something that's saleable in small parcels.
then we need to ask ourselves, is that really the government's responsibility? Can you guarantee me that what we decide is going to be that item that these people want and need? If we get into that development part, we come up with that development plan, we decide this is what's going in there. Is that what the entrepreneur is going to need? Or do we wait for the entrepreneur to figure out what he needs?
We're not telling the entrepreneur what should go into there. We're just offering pieces of ground.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what we're doing right now.
That's what we sell, is a piece of ground.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So we can.
They've got to decide how much they want.
Yeah,
But if I was looking at it, and I needed 40,000 square feet to do whatever it is that I wanted to do, and I look at that piece of property, 40,000 square feet is maybe only half of that upper lot, more or less. Do I want to be saddled with trying to do something with the rest of it? No. I'm going to go where I can find 40,000 square feet of dirt.
Well, that kind of makes me wonder. I couldn't help we went hiking up Bar Trail this weekend, and they thought all the development happened with the cog wreck. So they're doing improvements there. I guess they're going to have that together by spring.
Yeah.
And so you look at somebody like that. You have an investor who spent his own money to refurbish that entire thing, make it just like, wow, I'm going to do this, right? I just wonder whether you, as needing a 40,000 square foot area, are a player on this property. I'm not saying you're not, but I don't know that it's the job of DDA to make it cater to you, or whether by the fact that we just create a vision and have a space that's available, somebody like that comes along and go, what? That's chicken. It's what's the word? Chunk change for me to spend a few $1 million on that area. So, and as a community, as a city, it seems to me it'd be really nice for us to be able to attract somebody who really can do something with a property, and not try to force it to meet needs that it really may not even be designed to meet.
We've tried that in the past. We've developed those pictures,
Right.
and they've gone nowhere. So that has been tried. But yes, the market out there of an entrepreneur with multi-million dollars worth of capital is smaller than one who needs 40,000 square feet. So where is our market? Where can we find people? The chances of finding $3 or $4 or $5 million capital person is probably much smaller than one who would want 100,000 or 200,000 for 40,000 square feet. Then, if he's got the $2 million to buy all of that land, then you got to make sure that you got enough money to build it out. And that takes, a bigger person.
Yeah.
So it's where do we want to shape our market?
Wouldn't you share? I'm sorry.
Well, I think I understand exactly what you're proposing. And there are things about it I really like. The honesty in trusting the market to get things done, and just making our role simply being to make realistic pieces available to the market instead of this big, unwieldy, unrealistic thing that we can't get somebody to take. Maybe we can carve it up, better prepare it for the smaller business that might need. So anyway, I think I follow, I understand. There are things I like about that. Whenever considering it, I run into the same roadblock every time in my mind and thinking about the execution of that. And it is the development process for that property as we understand it will very quickly, once commenced, lead us to significant infrastructure costs. The first small party to go in there and build a building will likely be approved with minimal infrastructure costs. Right beyond that, we know we're looking at major drainage, major access, road improvements that become an insurmountable barrier to anyone who is that small party. So if we were to, let's say we proceed just exactly as you described, and someone comes along and says, I want 40,000 square feet, as you mentioned, and that's give or take half of the upper part of the property, which is arguably the prime piece, the one that's maybe the most visible, most accessible, best views of the peak, etc. And that piece is sold to someone who puts in a 2-story structure and hasn't really considered and doesn't have a whole lot of concern for what the rest of the development looks like. They're, as anyone at that level of investment would be focused solely on their plan. They somehow receive approval to develop the site without a new road, without major drainage improvements, maybe some minor ones to the temporary drainage on site, and they build. We sell them that piece and they build. And here we are 2 years later, the project is done, the business is open, and maybe it's doing well, maybe it's not, maybe it's somewhere around breaking, who knows? It's getting by, it's over there. And someone else comes along. Another medium-sized, small-sized, business of some whatever kind says, I really like this land next door, over just west of Site A. I need 40,000 square feet, roughly the other half. I'd like to put in basically the same thing these guys did, but it's a different use, complementary. And they cannot receive approval to proceed because that development requires a new street. And now, in order for them to proceed, millions of dollars have to be put into infrastructure, not hundreds of thousands. And can they proceed? Or are we against a roadblock at that point? Literally, the road needed is blocking the development from occurring because a business of that size focused on their project lacks the resources to develop the property. Is that where we end up? And at that point, have we shot ourselves in the foot by selling off one prime piece of the land, and now we have all these other little parcels that they just can't go until someone larger comes along who has the resources to install the infrastructure. A return on investment of that magnitude would only come with private investment, private property improvements that are significant. Right?
That's certainly a risk, undoubtedly. We've been waiting for the deep pockets to come now for how many decades? It hasn't happened. So that's why I'm just saying, okay, if whatever number of years that we've been trying to do it, and even this proposal right now, to me, doesn't have enough strength to move forward. So we really don't have a proposal for down there. So, okay, everything that we've tried in the past has failed. So let's do something different. Let's get outside the box and come up with something that may be different. Are there some risks? Absolutely. But you solve it along the way. If you sell 40,000 of prime, you get a prime piece for it. So now we've got some capital. We've got property tax coming in. We've got potentially sales tax coming in to help solve some of these other issues. When we become, the DDA, we'll say, becomes the master developer, controller of the funds, and move it forward. Because what we've done in the past has done nothing.
Waiting for the deep pockets to come along, and they never really have. I totally agree with you. I guess what concerns me is we're waiting for that no matter what, because deep pockets, to develop anything more than one small piece of the land will require deep pockets,
Sure,
no matter which way we go. So I do see the benefit you just described. If we get something started, at least there's some revenue.
And I see 2 or 3 different major points of land use on that piece of property, and they're going to be of different values. and different build-out times, yeah. And also then the impact on contiguous properties, that's to be considered also, how that can move forward. But yes, I guess I'm frustrated because we've had, 20 years of nothing, and lots of promises on stuff. And Mike Williams is just another promise that isn't coming to any kind of fruition. So let's get outside the box.
Well,
And now my proposal is a conversation starter, and all facets of it are not maybe the appropriate way to go. So you develop it and move it forward based upon what the market may bear.
is the hardware store an example of what you've described? A single piece carved out, sold off?
That's probably, the best example that we've got so far, yeah. That carved out a piece, and they've been successful. Yeah. Good point, thank you, yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, we know that it's going to take deep pockets to develop that beyond one 40,000 square foot piece or whatever that piece might be that somebody could put in there that wouldn't require all this additional development. But then at the end of the day, whoever comes next is going to have deep pockets. So, and I'm not opposed to, allowing one piece to go in there, but unless the city is willing to come up with, $4 or $5 million so we can put that infrastructure in and make it far more attractive. Do we have deep enough pockets to put that infrastructure in?
We would not
What I
need
saw
to
from
put it
what I see
all
from
in.
our budget, it's not quite. I think we're a little burdened with paying back the city at this point.
I don't know, we'd have to talk to some lenders. And there may be some...
On position day, okay. All right. I've sat down and I've looked. Yes, there's a lot of potential for that property over there. But there again, to all of us, I don't know, $5 million, $2 million for the property, $5 million or $3 million for the infrastructure improvements that would probably be necessary to put in water, sewer, drainage, access, and everything else. And that was how many years ago that they estimated $3 million for the necessary access changes? That was a number of years ago. So we know that's gone up considerably. Although, we know why the price goes up. It's not because it's really more expensive. It's because the money has less value due to the shenanigans that we have so many entities playing with.
You can't let yourself try to swallow the elephant all at one time. You do it in bites.
I agree.
The question is, do you start on the left side or the right side? One's a crappy proposition, the other one's a snotty proposition. I don't know, unless you start in the middle. I get it. I fully get it. I think that, in the meantime, probably one of the best things to do, we know that events bring huge money to this town in the summertime. We are limited, okay? And I'm really, 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 really wondering what would be something that would bring people here all the time. My revenues fall off crazy in the, between, and it's from 1 January until about, after Memorial Day. 5 months out of the year, my revenues go down by over 50%.
Let me reflect on that a little bit. That's in my mind. That piece of property has 3 zones that I see have different uses and different values. And this is now what if on that southernmost part, on the south side of the drainage ditch, that was residential of some sort, whatever configuration that happens to prove viable. What would that do to your wintertime business if there's a bunch of people living a block and a half away?
I've got entire neighborhoods within a block of here.
Yeah. Would that help
I
you?
have entire neighborhoods with hundreds of people living in it, a
So-
block from here.
Would that be contributory to some improvement rather than leaving it open space in the
I'd say the
wintertime?
pandemic has been a bigger improvement because we got more tourists because all these states are closed and all those people are coming here. I've had more tourists, although no huge increase in business, but I've had tons of people from Texas and Indiana and Kansas and all over the country here. Unusual for this time of year.
Yeah.
Okay? So, I don't know, maybe another pandemic might be in order.
You can certainly focus to a degree on what occurs here, but we as a group also have to look what's happening in our area, not just one business.
I got that.
Yeah.
I got that.
So
And
that's
also,
an indication.
if we, okay, so hospitality, we're really heavy into hospitality up here because we're very tourist heavy. Okay? Setting down, and what about industry? Well, we're kind of crippled there because what's the number one requirement for industry? The number one most important requirement for industry?
Energy.
Water. Water. Civilization, industry, none of it can exist without water. The energy part, hey, we can build more windmills that will never achieve their output as that what it took for the input up here because we got lots of wind. But at the end of the day, we're hampered by water. We are, and one of the big points, however, one of the positive points is we are on one of 3 major thoroughfares through the state of Colorado. Okay. However, there again, we come up with it's going to take a lot of money to develop the place, and the only thing that's on our side is time. That's all I see is that's on our side. We could, and by bringing, improving the property, putting the events in, allowing it to be used for events, might attract that individual that's willing to come up here and buy the place for, however many months of business he can get out of it per year. And us sitting there going, unless we put in the infrastructure. All
I've
right.
heard that for years, and
Yeah.
it hasn't worked.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jerry.
No, well, I just wanted to hit before it got down the road a little farther, and that is that the events part is really good, but maybe it shouldn't just be focused on tourism and stuff. That if it was more of a community type event,
Absolutely.
area,
No,
the bowling alleys, the putt-putt or whatever. But I think if we brought the locals downtown and give the locals something to do, and the youth of the area and us old men that need something to do, like bowl or something, that just is perfect for that, and that would feed everybody else around here,
Well,
and it would be so
cottage
anyway. Yeah,
setting up the flea markets or the cottage industry, the day where the cottage industry.
and let's make it so it's tourists, but it's also residents, that would
Absolutely.
use it.
I'm not shutting it out to events for just tourists.
Oh yeah, no, and I'm not saying you are.
Yeah.
I just want to say that.
Okay.
It needs-
Well,
Tanner, get your arm up for Hannah first.
I know, you guys did it before I just talked. I'm next.
Is there a way, back to what Robert had mentioned earlier on, is there a way for us to move forward at this point, since time is of the essence, no matter which path we're on, time is of the essence, and maybe we should start making some progress. I like what Robert mentioned, and maybe it's multi-pronged. If we can't all agree as to whether we should just let's go hire SEH to draw, a subdivision and propose uses and all that. Some may not like that, and there's a strong sentiment towards we should turn it into event grounds and use it to draw crowds into downtown, and yet not all of us can agree to that. Can we do both? Can we?
Why don't we
can
just take the plans out of mothball that the city spent over $1 million on and bring those out and lay those out? Because that will be just as effective as hiring a new developer or a developer promotion person to lay out something entirely new that we spent a bunch of money on. I really think we're getting above and beyond the government's position. We need to be looking for developers who will come in here and do this, okay? As opposed to us sitting here saying, how are we going to do it? Not our purview. Our purview is to find that developer, okay? Find that developer with the deep pockets. Until then, what do we do with the property? Well, what's within our what is something that would be within our purview? I'm having a real hard time finding anything. You know, we're like Main Street. We don't do events. However, making it available for those events and promoting that. All right. I for one would be willing to allow free usage of it for events. Okay. To whoever wants to come in and set up those events in conjunction with the city, because that's the one that issues all the permits and everything. We put up we put up the for sale sign. We advertise it out there around the world. I don't know, on FISBO or wherever. But we also need to remember that's a dual-edged sword. Okay. What if I came in and bought it for $2 million and I let it set fallow? What then? Does that accomplish anything?
Well,
Does it accomplish anything?
it returns $2 million to the taxpayers and gets the DDA out of the way.
Yeah.
But in the
Murphy
meantime as
paying
well,
a bunch of property tax on that, which would help the DDA.
Vacant
Yeah.
land is taxed at
Vacant land.
29%.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So I guess I could go over there and put a food truck pavilion on there and be good to go.
Yeah.
well, Al, I think what you're talking about is we're seeing a lack of traction from the big players and the small players. We're seeing a lack of traction to be actual execute on it. And even I'll call them the mid-range players, like I would see Mike as. I question, because I haven't seen any financials, I question whether they can actually pull the trigger on it. I mean, even if they could, and even if they signed it, I don't know. I'm not trying to disqualify him in any way, but my sense is there's a certain savvy that's required to make this happen. And I see genuineness, I see very much genuineness with Mike and his players, but I don't know if I see the savvy that's required of it. So whether it's a small player like you're suggesting or making that part of it, or whether it's the big player coming along, what the DDA has the capacity to do is to make it attractive. So the sign is going to tell you who's coming. The sign is the realtor is going to come back to the DDA and say, well, we have these people and they have this thing. Their limitations with it is, or their negotiation is this. Or where we have this, we're going to start to get some feedback of what sort of players are coming. Before pouring money into one type of player or another, I don't know that that's the answer yet, But what is something that is within our purview and budget that I see is if we spend the money on stuff as you say, there's already plans for, put some of that basic in, and all you're basically saying is, if you've ever staged a house, realtors will tell you when you stage a house, you get more money for it, and you get a better a deal by somebody who knows how to stage it. We have a piece of land. If we stage that piece of land and in the meantime make it useful for the community, we've spent our money as a DDA well on something that we have no control of until the right player comes along.
Yeah.
And we dissolve that stuff that's in the community about DDA doing nothing or all of that stuff. It just goes away. Because you've taken the reasonable steps, you've spent the money in an appropriate fiduciary way to make it a palette to utilize, and it's like, and everybody's a winner. And Tanner, time's in essence, to sit around and talk about it, not to act on it, and make proactive steps to make something happen when it's usable, which is that window for the spring, to me is an important step that I think we should look at now.
And that staging concept is certainly a very viable, way of doing that. And I guess and I hadn't thought of that term, but I guess I'm starting to think that's what I was trying to propose too.
Okay.
Was to stage it. Now, the staging process. There's the AmeriGas property. How do we handle that? There's a highway access there. Is that important to us? Probably. How can we take that small piece of ground and incorporate it into the overall, say, staging of that upper portion? Taking care of some of the drainage, putting in some of the boundary lines so that somebody comes in and knows that there's a boundary line at that street. There's a boundary line at this street. We know where the boundary line is going to be because of the cog car that's set there. That's part of that staging process. Defining what risks might be there. The highway, CDOT, over the surface drainage. You know, there's a whole, and our debt service that we have to maintain on it also. So there's a variety of factors that have to be solved. And I think that word staging is really desirable. We did put a sign up, 3-4 years ago? The market wasn't ready, I guess, to produce anything for us. So it's been done in the past. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it now, because it could still be productive, yeah. Because that's how people find out about it.
Yeah.
A sign is a cheap way of advertising, absolutely. So, yeah, starting to think outside the box is going to require, a number of people putting all in ideas, mixing them all together, and then selecting those that are going to work best. Try it. Some are not going to work. Throw them away and try another one.
Tanner?
But, so, how do we use that property, To me, there's 3 different uses down there. They are interconnected, but they are different. If I was looking 40,000 square feet to put in a restaurant, I would not want to try to solve the stuff on the south side of the drainage ditch. I want to focus on the restaurant. If I was going to take 60,000 feet and put in a furniture store, no, I don't want to solve it.
I spoke up first.
I just had to do that.
Okay, Tanner.
Just kidding, by the way. Fully support whatever. Okay, I'd like to propose something and see if there's any appetite for it. Maybe with our limited board here, it's not the right time, but I think we need to start moving forward here. So it seems to me we have 2 competing ideas for how to go forward. Are we staging the property by utilizing it? Or are we staging the property by putting all the whatever development plans together that we can access, from this property and uses that we think would work, and etc. Subdividing it. Can we pursue both at the same time? Can we let these ideas both move forward, competing to achieve the common goal that they share, which is a healthier downtown, a more prosperous downtown, with more commerce, more jobs, more residents, more tax revenues, more of all that. That's our, economic prosperity is the goal. Mm-hmm. We're all aiming at the same thing. Can we advance both ideas? And so here's an idea for how that might work. We hire someone or work with someone, engage somebody like George Christian, or on maybe another part of the scale, an SEH design build, and we tell them we want the property listed immediately. Work with Al to understand the ideas for subdividing it, for staging it for development, and actively pursue that. Right now, without any more valuable development proposal and expecting just what we expect, we'd say our sale price for the property is, and pick a number. There you go, let's get that part in the works. And in the meantime, our expectation is that it still may take years to reach any development. We don't know how many years. Could be 1, could be 10, could be 12, and that would put it after the DDA doesn't even exist anymore. Somewhere out there in the future, there may be development. We are no longer willing to wait exclusively for that. That would be continuing to do what we've always done. So we're also going to add some investment into improving the property so that it can be staged, if you will, in the other way, by using it. And so George, Christian, or SEH, Design Build, or whomever, we also want you drawing that up. We have a concept from 2016. We have things NES has put together. We have ideas from the city engineer and Mike Williams we have all these ideas that here are those. Just like work with Al and get that set of ideas, here are these others we can give you, and we want to start taking steps there as well. Both will cost some money. It would probably be argued that it is wasteful to not pick one path and focus our resources exclusively on it, but we remain divided as to what that best path is, and maybe it's in our interest to just move forward even at the expense of pursuing both simultaneously and letting them compete.
Melding multiple of ideas is probably, get hybrid vigor. Ideally you come with one that has the greatest chance of survival with a multiple of ideas, as long as you are willing to compromise and work productively towards the goal. So that's the important part there, yeah.
Jerry?
Well, I like what you were just saying very much. Now, I'm not savvy in the real estate world and stuff, but we need to market the property. I think we've come to that point where if we had somebody that would reach out nationally, that would actually seek out people, whether it be a commercial real estate company, but not somebody that's just going to put a sign out there and be done with it, but actual market it and see how that, and then that won't cost us any out-of-pocket expense.
It will cost us about 20% on the backside because they charge about 12 to 15% for commercial marketing.
Yep, but
12 to
it gets the
15%.
ball. Yeah, but it gets the ball moving and possible development there. That maybe that should be our role, is not pretend like we're developers, because we're not, and turn it over to somebody at least to promote it and to put the feelers out there. Is that what commercial real estate does? Do they seek out?
Yeah.
So I see we have about 6 minutes left. So can I is it okay for me to make a motion? Oh, I mean,
Well,
I am, or is it all right if I make a motion?
I don't know. I'm not.
Well, I'm going to make a
I
motion,
apologize.
and it would look like this. I move that we solicit realtors to interview with us at our next meeting to bring their proposals of how they would market the property. I would propose that we bring to the table at our next meeting the plans to make the property viable for the spring, what it would cost us to make it the palette, if you like, the staging of the property so it's available for public use, and that we work with, once we've defined, I don't know how to put this as part of it, but I want to include the idea of taking all the pieces that we've done so far, But that's really has to be done in conjunction with a realtor. You need to identify a realtor and then take the plans, take the proposals, work with them. That becomes part of their marketing. So I'm not sure that that is any more than an inclusive part once we've got the realtor. So I'd just like to propose that we set in motion interviewing realtors, and that we set in motion our cost of what it's going to cost us to make that property viable by the spring, and create that palette, which we can determine if it's going to be no charge or whether there's a charge or whatever. Just that's going to bring action here that we're going to stand back and go, now we can actually say, yeah, let's have a look at those plans. I mean, we could get somebody that the realtor tells us has some value. So I'm going beyond the motion. My motion is that we bring in realtors, solicit realtors to interview before us at our next meeting, and that we take what's in mothballs now in terms of staging, bring some life into it, that we determine we're going to allocate certain budget dollars towards it so we can make it happen for the spring.
I second.
We'll have to be selective in our
We have a motion on
realtors
this.
because
We have a motion on the table. We cannot discuss it further once it's been seconded.
I'll second.
No, Jerry already
Oh,
seconded.
good. Okay, so now we're in discussion.
The discussion has to take place before the motion, is that if I'm correct?
After the second.
Okay.
Yeah. We have to select the realtor with expertise, we'll say, in commercial markets. Those that are predominantly residential focused would not have probably the skill level nor the contacts of one that is also focuses on commercial type stuff. So we've got to make sure that we select the appropriate one.
I would like to see it brought out publicly. Get Pat to bring out a plan that the DDA is working on to bring in a real estate agent that we are looking for agents to get their opinion, to tell us how to market it, to actually do that. And I think that we need the public to know what we're doing, and that we're trying, and we'll get some public feedback, I'm sure. But I think it needs to not be quiet. We need to let everybody know that that's what we're doing.
Well, we have the meetings and publish the minutes.
Yeah.
We can't go out on social media and allow that to happen.
Yeah.
I'm opposed to spending a bunch of money on this. Okay, pull the plans that are in mothballs out to let those be examples.
I agree.
Or
That's-
shining examples.
But that's why you
I'm
hired.
I'm not real big on looking at bringing SEH in, having them on the hook for possible development, but also, one of my things is, where do we go find that realtor? And it needs to be somebody with a far and wide reach.
Yep.
Of course, with the internet, we have that these days.
Yep.
But I feel like I'm trying to force feed a kid that isn't hungry here.
I can get you 2 or 3 names of commercial realtors for
Outside
Colorado Springs.
For Colorado Springs? Okay.
Yeah. The reason for there is because that's where the commercial activity is. We don't have somebody up here that's specifically commercial.
Boy, Tim Hall comes to mind,
Yep. Yep.
and not in a favorable way.
Toss out.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, so SEH, that's one thing I believe that they do. They do solicit, investors, developers, businesses, and tenants, and they're a huge firm. I mean, they're big. And
Right.
I want to say,
Well, also, we need to remember, are we allowed to sell this property for speculation purposes?
no, not yet.
Okay.
And that's a problem.
So
We tried to change
so they
that.
have to, not only, and so they have to come with, they have to come with plans to go there. right?
I don't think we're politically there yet, just to say.
Well, yeah, and nothing's permanent, as we have successfully modified the agreement between the city and DDA in the past, and now that there's there are new council members, that might be something we can change.
Sure that. So,
We need to vote on the motion.
we have the motion on the floor to vote on it, to move forward with listing the property for development.
Well, the motion is to solicit realtors.
Okay.
For the next meeting, to solicit, did you write down what I said as a motion?
Yeah, I said move to solicit realtors to interview for their marketing plans of the property. I think this is part of your motion to additionally move towards staging the property and also develop the cost estimate for what that staging would be, or is that was that?
No, it's a two-part, it's
Okay,
absolutely
yep.
a two-part motion, that's right.
Okay.
And to bring both of those to the table for our next meeting, for action, for us to move forward.
Let's, in the interest of time and everything else, and taking this one step at a time, and not getting horse before the cart, I'd ask you to withdraw the second part, that we solicit the realtors first, and then we go with the planning. If we find a realtor, and then we go forward with the planning of the, which means we can be absolutely be thinking about it. Okay.
I think time's of an essence, I'm gonna hold with my motion at this point.
Okay.
So,
All right.
And Al, you had seconded it. With the clarification, are you?
I concur. And call for the question.
I think a good realtor will help with suggesting the staging. Will have
Okay.
a good advice.
All right.
I think your input.
Okay, so to move forward with the question, or the motion question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Refresh my memory. What's the time frame or the definition of holding land for speculation?
We sell it. No development required.
How long? Okay. I want to buy that piece of property.
That's
How
something.
soon do I have
That's
to?
something the city, we don't need to be worried about that. We are to bring about development. Okay? Sales of the property, if the city wants to claw it back and take it and then sell it, they are more than welcome to do that. But our focus is on development.
Okay, I was just trying to get a definition of what speculation means in this situation from the city.
do you know, I was just gonna suggest that the action steps that we can kind of work on, would you be willing, and I don't know who determines that, would you be willing to kind of start putting out feelers to get different realtors to come to the table next meeting? Did you
I will-
kind of head that up? Would
I
you?
will call a couple and see. I can contribute to it,
Okay. Well,
And
the
I
people,
need to
can other
work
on
with
board
Murph and-
focus
Yeah.
to you as that person who's gonna synthesize that?
I can work on that.
And Tanner, would you take the whole thing of the blueprint part about the palette, creating the staging? Is that, I'm aware that we gotta move it forward and my clock's run out,
There are a
so.
couple of.
Yeah.
I mean, I would reach out to SEH because they've been contacting us, for updates, and I would say, hey, here's what the discussion is. Real estate, staging it at down one path as well as the other. There's where we're at. Are you guys interested? How would you facilitate this two-pronged approach? I would also maybe look at some other design build firms, or maybe go back to NES and ask for some thoughts. And I'd reach out to Sally Riley and tell her, the honesty of, here's what the discussion was and what her thoughts are on how to move forward, and then whatever information I could gather, I would just bring that back here for the next meeting.
Don't you already have that and some numbers of what that is back from 2016?
Very few numbers. So much has changed since then. I don't really have numbers, and I think if we were to, actively move in that direction, we would need a professional, some sort of,
Oh, I see.
site planner or
advisors.
somebody to estimate costs. And say, landscape architect maybe,
Right.
based on what we're talking about. The I want to go to Al's question. I think the speculation and what defines it is what's in our agreements with the city, and that is that we have until December 31st, 2023 to have caused development that is compliant with the requirements in the agreement, or they have that right of reentry. So if we were to enter any sort of agreement or bring a development agreement forward that does not accomplish that, then it's essentially, we're selling the land off, but for something that is not a development plan, it's a buyer who says maybe someday. I think where the line in the sand is drawn with speculation. We can't sell it to somebody who doesn't have an approved development plan that meets the requirements of that agreement.
That's a tough nut.
Terribly. The whole thing's a tough. Okay, so real quick, I'm gonna make just bring one thing out here.
That's why we tried to change it, that amendment a year ago.
Jim of Foxworth has agreed to have a couple of his people put together a cost estimate for the platform around the cog car, and I should have that by next meeting. They're working on it. They said they might have something later today, but still haven't gotten any figures on that. Okay.
On that note, I
Yes, sir.
have also reached out to the gentleman who drew this plan for Mary Jo. Mary Jo had been working with David, something with a B, an architect builder here in town.
No.
It started with Langley, and then that wasn't. I guess for some reason she switched to David. I can't remember the name. I'm sorry. I do have a call into him. I left a voicemail to ask about this and what if there were any other directions Mary Jo had given. Anything? Is this the completed plan as he knows it? And then what cost estimate is there? I also wanted to, mention this under Woodland Station improvements to ask, are there any thoughts from the board on this? And in the interest of time, I'm just going to jump out there and say, here are some thoughts I have. I like the idea of a platform around the car so that people can go up, peek in the windows during events or things whenever the car may be held open to the public. There's access that makes sense. I think that this is a bit large to accommodate that. I don't think we need as much square footage as we see here. My first thoughts from a design standpoint are to take this boundary of the platform in a bit, and then to take this ramp and turn it and eat up this part of the platform with it, effectively eliminating quite a bit of square footage, and then maybe price that out and see how that looks. And that would be, our initial bid on what would be a substantial permanent improvement, but then also pursue temporary solutions that would be the type of maybe folding metal steps that come out to events when you need something to go up to a pavilion or a platform. Sometimes you see them on construction sites or, in front of mobile trailers, construction trailers, just something that will get people up one side and down the other that can be purchased for much less and then used as needed. Mr. Carter is very interested, very, very interested in a ceremony dedicating this car, having the plaque installed, and allowing people into and out of the car. He had asked about permanent or temporary, whatever. Pursue anything that gets it done. And he also offered some additional resources, said to just give him a price. So what I would like to do is, if the board's okay with it, I will ask the gentleman who drew this plan if he has a cost estimate, but also with a smaller scale design in place, what would that cost estimate be? And then I would like to also look at the cost of some temporary steps that I think might work for us and bring those costs forward.
Or the ramp, they're including handicap access.
That's what all that stairs.
Yeah.
So
So
Well-
it's got to remain.
Just real quick, one of the thought processes was that that would be a spot where people could actually rent the platform and utilize it for a wedding ceremony or a
Right.
reception type thing. So right now, that's what's in with the idea that it receives commercial grade construction.
Oh, I see.
Right, and I wouldn't ask for any sort of approval to move
Okay.
forward on a plan, just continuing the work that was started here by Mary Jo, so that what can come back to the board is at least an option to say yes or no or whatever. And then Moose is Loose is coming up, and that's one thing Mr. Carter had mentioned. He wanted to have the ceremony at a time when there was other activity in the community and maybe could draw some people over there, not just have a ceremony
Yeah.
with 4 of us,
Exactly.
but make it more of a community event. I had mentioned Moose is Loose being about the only thing coming up that I had any sort of influence over ensuring it would take place and we would have some people. He loved the idea. Well, that commences February 13th as kickoff and it goes through the end of the month. So sometime during that time period, we'll be able to work in a ceremony to dedicate the car. Jeff Cahill intends to install that plaque at no cost. We would have somebody preside over that meeting, that ceremony, and dedicate the car to Myrna, and etc. In order to do that in accordance with Mr. Carter's vision, some at least temporary steps would be in place so people could access the car during that time. If I can find some at a reasonable cost and he's willing to fund them, is the board okay with our proceeding and holding a ceremony during Moose's Loose? And I'm asking now because we may not have another meeting
The plaque's all done.
before the plaque is done, it's on hand, it's ready. I just need to know if it comes at no cost to the DDA and we can privately fund some stairs, is the DDA okay authorizing the use of the property and opening up of the car and a ceremony being held? I mean, can I go ahead with that?
Make a motion that Tanner go ahead with arranging the dedication of the car with the installation of the plaque.
Yep.
And
If you need a second, I second it.
Okay.
And then I just have a discussion point after that.
All right.
That's okay. You talked about changing this design here. To me, I see a bottleneck by the door of the, by these stairs coming up. I see a bottleneck at the entrance point, no other side. There, I see a bottleneck where people are coming in and going out from the door going into the car. I'd propose that if you're going to do something with this, no other end.
no, that's the entryway
These
to the
are
car
the
is over
doors
there
to
where
the
the doors
car.
are. Where the door symbols are on the construction.
Where's 24?
It's along the
24 is
bottom.
up here.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm sorry, 24 is up here.
Ah,
I'm looking at it.
oh, okay. I totally withdraw my comments. I was going to say, look back. Yeah, okay, good. So 24 is at the top.
24 is up here.
So there is plenty of room to come in and out there.
There's
reasonable. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, then I like that.
So the deck would be on the back, from our perspective, would be on the other side.
Southern
of it.
exposure
Okay.
and yeah.
So
with
the
Got it.
mast is going to be at the mountain. The larger deck
Right.
platform is going to
Right.
be at the
Pikes
mountain.
Peak is down here.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I.
And so as it lays right now,
Yeah.
right there, it's
Yeah.
like this.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, like
Okay.
Expenditures allowed for this? We already have a motion on the floor for that.
Well, you said no cost.
if I can accomplish it at no cost now,
Yes,
if something
absolutely.
happens
Okay.
and Mr. Carter procures something and says I'd still like some reimbursement or whatever, we might bring that back and make the request. But at this point, the authorization that I'm asking for is there is no commitment by the
Okay.
government.
All right.
If we can make it happen and get it done.
All right.
Well, I'm with you, Tanner, and my first impression was 20 foot deck. That's huge. You know, but
Well, dwarf the
if
car.
Murph's comments about it being used commercially, as far as renting it out, stuff like that, staging events on it makes sense too. But it starts to overtake that area, quite a bit.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
15 years.
What's that? And this whole thing shrinks down,
Yeah.
but still usable.
Yeah. So anyway, that was just an impression I got. I had a comment.
With this type of an improvement, does that start to bring forward?
Okay, guys,
thought
hang on a
that-
second. We've got a motion on the floor to move with the dedication. Okay, let's nix the discussion on the deck right at the moment.
Okay.
Are we going forward with the dedication?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Opposed? Good. Make it so. Number one. All right. Now,
Okay.
as far as the deck goes, I've got no problems with Tanner doing that.
I'd like to see a bid on what it is that's already on the, aside from going in and modifying it, just get a bid on what we've got first, rather than spending more on having an operation.
Yeah, that's what I'll go ahead and do unless there's objection. Is I'm going to talk to the guy about this plan, any cost estimate, but also if this were made a bit smaller through a couple of design modifications, what does that look like cost wise? And I can bring that back and say, for whatever it's worth, guys, here's a drawing and here are prices.
They're working on that pricing right now up at Foxworth,
Right.
the actual construction folks.
Right.
Okay, so we could possibly go down a little bit on that. Yes, sir?
But the question that I had is, with this type of an improvement, with this amount of square footage, does it start to activate a requirement for bathroom facilities? And I don't know the answer to that.
That's a good question.
If it's too
Right.
far to come to
Bathroom's
use
right over
these.
here.
Yeah, well, but there's a distance in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Ask Sally. I'll send Sally a copy.
Bathroom facilities right there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, about as close as you can get.
yeah.
There's some nice trees in there. Will we have all the bathrooms in?
Yeah, there you go. We're mountain people.
I don't know.
Wait for the
That's
sun to
just
go down.
Yeah.
a risk factor.
Are the bathrooms that are there sufficient?
Yeah,
Well, that's,
with
Right.
ADA.
We've got about 10 minutes left, guys, before, because we're already in overtime. So let's go ahead and move on to our, we've all got that down. You're gonna go for smaller. Al, let's come back with any questions. You're the guy that tends to be the developer. What type of questions we might need
We'll
to ask
see what I
Sally.
come up with, yeah.
Okay. So,
And you've got people, so whomever else has people, that's great. We can bring it forward.
okay, business support initiatives.
Don't have anything on that.
The only thing I have is that I did mention to Main Street about potentially utilizing the DDA if they run into anybody that is would like to come into town and start something on Main Street or get a business on Main Street or improve a business or property or anything like that in their district, in the Main Street district, that they could possibly send them over to us. Yeah, Main Street's in a little bit of turmoil at the moment.
hey, Murph,
Yes.
what comes to mind when you said that is, I think we need to be a little bit cautious in that we don't make it sound like it's a rubber stamp, because we got in trouble with natural grocers on
Yeah,
that.
well, I didn't.
But you know what I'm saying is just, we're here in the right circumstances. We're there for TIF and stuff.
Yeah, well, I was looking at it as a teamwork possibility.
What's that?
Don't think so.
My clock's run out, so.
Okay, so a teamwork, a possibility of teamwork, okay? Of course, we had a couple of naysayers over there, but at the end of the day, it's all about teamwork. And if they come up with anybody, I'd recommend that they bring, those people to us to examine TIF. All right. I had an employee who's better 99% could not find or was finding jobs, but nothing that they could support. So I am supporting a food truck that is stationed in Woodland Park, is owned by a person in Woodland Park. And I allow them to use out back, I allow them to use it as commissary here. And yeah, food trucks aren't as quite as great as you might think, because they're paying a parking fee of $40 per day to the city, $1,200 a month. Okay, over $14,000 per year to park a food truck in this town.
We'll tell them we'll charge 20 a day
There
and
you
they
go.
can park right over there.
There you go.
Yeah.
No, it's,
Sure the city would love
I don't know what
that.
it's part of their permit thing.
That was
But-
actually the solution in Salida when the food truck thing came up, and the city was charging so much, so we had a bunch of basically restaurants with alley lots that said, "Yeah, come and park your truck here," and it allowed
Wow.
the trucks to flourish. But
Yeah,
Does
well,
that
it's still
happen?
costing them $40 a day out here because the
Right.
city is
because it's city parking, right?
City
Yeah.
leasing the parking lots
Right.
for city parking. So
Does that help or hinder
Why?
does that help or hinder you?
they're only here on the 2 days that we're closed, okay, and the other days they go where other food trucks are, and the food trucks are, and most of the ones I've seen are all from right here in Woodland Park.
Yeah.
Okay, and I like that other people are getting out the cottage industry thing and all that. Cool
There's your
stuff.
first festival.
Say again.
There's your first festival. You can have a food truck
Exactly.
round up,
Well, it's-
truck round
it's-
up.
Chunk
You
out
know,
there.
and you've probably heard me state this before, but I'm going to reiterate it. It's
Yeah.
like the on the hook.
Yeah, I know
truck,
they're
you
from out of town.
Oh yeah, and they come in here and there's a line around the block to get in. Meanwhile, you sell fish, really
Yeah.
good. So does.
But not everybody
again,
likes Murph.
Yeah, and then they don't pay any sales tax, or well, any property taxes.
They're paying a $40. They're paying like almost twice as much as me in property tax to park.
Yeah, but how? If it costs them $40 for today, can you open your store for $40?
$200 an hour.
Yeah, you know, so they're at a
$200 an
huge,
hour in sales.
a huge advantage, and they take sales away from you, and then when they're done, after paying their $40, they take every penny back down out of
You know
this
what?
economy. And
That's
so I have an
people's-
issue.
That's people's choice if they want to go there and eat.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying though, I don't see, I don't like it.
I hear you, Jerry.
So under business support initiatives, we've had some success in the past. The business license fee is now reduced and is going to be reduced again next year. The city is committed to taking all the sales tax vendor fee revenue and expending it through third parties for maintenance and improvements of downtown. So we didn't get everything we asked for, but we did make a difference. There's nothing currently on this topic, but there are a couple of other things that come to mind I just want to throw out to you guys. The idea of property tax reduction and maybe an advocate as such. The city council did reduce the city's mill rate, but the effective mill rate for the mill levy for those of us paying taxes downtown has gone up. So even though the city lowered theirs, others went up, and it's a function of voters. But there is still some control through the local, like the fire district's board, the Board of Education, the ambulance district board. They can lower mills if they choose to. It's a difficult thing to, I mean, we almost never see it, but the city did it, and maybe the ice is broken there. So advocacy helps. Maybe that's something we want to talk more about at some point, and being an advocate for lower tax rates. Facade improvements is something we've talked about in the past. It's your kind of back to the conversation about reaching out to Main Street and saying, hey, how can we help get new business and this and that? And well, there are some other things that we've talked about before, like beautification grants, facade improvement grants. If any existing property owner wants to make meaningful improvements to their properties, that's one of the things DDAs are intended to, assist with, and maybe we can work on a smaller scale than just on the big scale that we typically see with complete renovations or new construction. So that's another topic we could potentially put forward for more discussion.
Would that include signage, Tanner, or actual physical facade?
I would think so. I know signage is important. Yeah. Something else that, well, I just lost my train of thought, so never mind.
Signage, dragging up facade improvements,
Yeah, I don't know, business.
Okay.
I'm just thinking the pro-business
Yeah.
positions that we can have. And oh, yeah, the other thing I was going to mention is to the idea of, the concern that Jerry expressed about making it sort of a, rubber stamp or a blanket commitment to grant TIF reimbursement or incentive. I agree, maybe we want to discuss more what an actual TIF policy looks like, but in the meantime, we do have the TIF application that Al and Ellen had produced, and that's a pretty, that's a really comprehensive document that asks a lot of information, and
Yeah.
it doesn't, my recollection is it doesn't limit what TIF can be used for. It doesn't say, well, only if you're doing these sorts of things or making public improvements or building a new building, or it doesn't have any real restrictions, but it does ask for a lot of information. So if we keep leaning on that, anybody that comes forward and wants any sort of DDA assistance in any project, we need to be sure the very first thing we do is say, here's the TIF application, fill that out. And maybe that's something you want to give the Main Street organization, so Gail Wingard has a copy in case she comes across anybody that's asking.
Okay, good idea.
Give them that TIF application.
Absolutely.
Okay.
As far as I was very happy personally with what the city decided to do on the. At least they are now using the monies for what it was initially intended. And there were those. There were those detractors saying, that was a verbal agreement or something, and things change. There are others who.
Mary Jo. Mary Jo just decided to join us.
Oh,
Great,
wow.
guys, we have a quorum again. That's another thing I was going to mention. I think our meeting actually ended when Robert walked out.
Yeah.
True.
So,
Oh, it did. We don't have we don't have any more. We don't have any more votes to take. So, I think we've generally discussed everything about enough today. We don't have much. We don't